Welcome to Alignment Adventures, a podcast where we explore what it means to live a fulfilling, aligning, and present life. I'm your host, Lisa Tahir, and I'm so dang glad you're here. Hello, my loves, and welcome back to another episode of Alignment Adventures. I'm so excited and so grateful that you are here. Today, we have another super fun and enlightening and expansive conversation with Lisa Tahir. Now, Lisa Tahir is the founder of Psychoastrology and the author of the Chiron Effect, Healing Our Core Wounds Through Astrology, Empathy, and self-forgiveness. So we're really diving into astrology again today, which is so synchronistic because, as you guys know, I've been diving into that myself. I just felt intuitively pulled to kind of explore that more. And I hope that's just a good reminder to you guys. Like, this is how this works. You feel little nudges to do something, and then you go and research it, or you go and read it, or you go and do that thing, whatever it is. Just follow those little nudges, and that keeps leading you to more and more different things, like this beautiful conversation that I'm having with Lisa Tahir. And guys, her book was endorsed by His Holiness the Dalai Lama. He said, as a student of Buddhist science, I have great confidence in the role empathy and forgiveness play in human development. The Chiron Effect will be of interest to many and will greatly benefit readers. So that is so incredible and so amazing that her book was endorsed by the Dalai Lama. Like, when I saw that, my jaw dropped. But in this conversation, we dive into what is the Chiron Effect. It truly is a diagnostic tool you can use to help you figure out some core wounding. A lot of times we carry around baggage or subconscious beliefs that we're not even aware of. So this can really help point you in a certain direction. And then from there, you can use different modalities to kind of overcome that core wounding, which she talks about how to do that as well. And she gives so many practical tips, especially on how to connect with our intuition and get past those mind stories, which is something I'm always talking about. So this conversation covers a lot of different things. So with that being said, let's get right into it. I know you guys are going to enjoy it as much as I did. Oh, and before I forget, stick around to the end. I'm going to be pulling the winner for my September giveaway for Enlightened Candle. So make sure you stick around to the end. Lisa, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and for taking time out of your schedule to share your message with my audience. I'm so excited for what today's conversation is going to bring.
Lindsay, you're welcome. I'm so excited to be on Alignment Adventures with you and everyone listening.
Let's get right into it. So I always like to ask right off the bat, because this is such a vague question to answer, but who is Lisa?
I'm going to give you the answer that I really think in my own mind, though it might not be the typical answer. I'm pure positive energy. And that's what I often think about at the essence of myself, you, I believe everyone. We really are that pure positive energy, that spark of creation. And then I think we fill in the specifics around that as far as what we love, what we dislike, what we do for a living. But at my core, I really am this pure positive energy and seek every day to live from that place in my own life.
I love that answer. And I feel like so many people have forgotten that they are pure positive energy. Do you feel like that?
I do. I'm nodding my head as you're saying that because I think we get so wrapped up, and definitely it's not something I answer at the typical cocktail party or event. I go into, oh, I'm Lisa. I'm a licensed therapist. I'm a podcaster. But like taking this opportunity on your show to really, I think beyond all of those roles that we play, at the core of who we are definitely this energy that is nothing but good, and things happen to us that cause us to think differently, to feel differently, to think we're unworthy and we don't deserve. Certainly I've been in those places in my life, and at moments am and have to like pull myself out of it, snap back. How about, do you ever find that too?
Oh, all the time. And even you just saying this, it just feels so resonant in my body. I'm like, oh, yeah, like already today I've forgotten this, and I talk about this all the time and I preach about it all the time, but it's so easy to forget, which I find so frustrating. But you're right. Like, the typical answer at the party is you like list all your identities.
Right.
But
And
when we strip
yes,
those away, like
yes.
what's left?
And I think that's okay because I do the same thing. It's not necessarily, appropriate or safe to at every with every person to be like, "Oh, I'm like source. I'm, whatever in that spiritual sense." Because
Mhm.
it's like people would look at us really strangely and that doesn't feel good. We all want to be liked. So I think definitely be appropriate, but also remember, regardless of the roles that you play and fulfill in your life, that you are just really like this love in a body, this energy, like absolute creation within.
Mm. I just had to soak that in for a minute. That feels so good. Such a great way to start this. So, my next question for you before we get into all the amazing things that you are doing, what does living in alignment mean to you?
Lindsay, I'm certain I would have answered that question differently at various evolutions of my life. But today, the best way I can think and conceive living in alignment for me is when my beliefs are in alignment with my desires. Simply stated, that I believe I can have what I really want. And I know a lot of my life, I've had beliefs and I didn't believe that they could come true for me. And a lot of that was sourced from others, like, Lisa, be realistic, or my parents, like, I think people want to protect us. They don't want us to be disappointed or let down. So we try to kind of scale down our dreams into something that's manageable for others and ourselves. But I've learned that, like, I just want to live the best life and shoot for the stars and believe that what I want, I can have, even if it seems completely unrealistic, based it upon my manifested reality in this moment, that like it's just a snapshot in time moving forward, and that we really can, like, life will help us to have the things we most deeply desire. That's what I think alignment is,
Mhm.
believing that we can have what we want.
I agree 100%.
How about for you? I'm curious how you would answer that today versus other times.
You know, my definition is evolving as well. Like at first, when I started this podcast, I said living in alignment was just doing things that you love. But I
Yeah,
really resonate with what you say as well, because I'm realizing as I'm sharing this message and as I've continued to have people on here and share what I believe, like that evolves
it does.
and we're constantly changing.
Yeah,
And that can feel a little exhausting at times, but it's also beautiful at the same time because what felt aligning, even 5 minutes ago, 5 years ago, is going to change. And we just kind of have to be okay with that and find the beauty in that and kind of ease into that a little bit.
when I like what you just referenced about it can be exhausting. I was just on a call with a client and he's been really into self development and personal transformation. And I found myself reminding him, as I often remind my own self, that it can get exhausting to be on this self improvement journey. And I think it's really important, Lindsay, to just stop and pause and love where you are. I've had to do that more and more. Like, you know what? I'm good enough as I am. And if I never make another change, which is kind of impossible, but if I never make another change, like, I'm good enough right now. And just to like, oh, like really appreciate where I am, what I've created, and like to know it's enough. And I encourage you listening or watching to do that as well. Like, you're enough right now. And I even feel like, oh, it's okay to just pause. How do you see that?
Well, you're speaking to my soul because that is like my biggest challenge right now. Like I was even thinking about that today when I was on a walk this morning and it was so beautiful and magnificent. I've been dreaming about going on a walk because it's been so hot here. I'm like, you know what? I really am living a lot of the things I used to dream about, but I
Yeah.
still get so caught up in the what's next. Okay, I've got to do this. I've got to do this. I've got to keep going. I
Hmm.
find that to be my hardest, our biggest challenge right now is enjoying what I've manifested while also like, you're always a dreamer. You're always, like
Yes.
we just said, evolving. And that is just so tricky for me in this season.
Yeah. No, I like it. I love Abraham Hicks.
Me too.
And Esther talks about, being satisfied with what is and eager for more. And that
Mhm.
phrase comes up a lot for me lately. Just be satisfied with what is. Because as you said, this is what I'm living is a lot of what I dreamt about years ago. and it's come to pass. And just to really like pause and notice that and be so satisfied with what is. And I think that actually allows things to start to rearrange for us to
Mm,
bring the next things that we most deeply desire.
totally. And when we talk about this and we say this, I'm like, oh, it's so simple and so easy to forget. It's just wild to me. But that's why I love having these conversations.
Me
Hopefully, we can,
too.
remind more and more people so it's not so forgettable all the time. But let's
Absolutely.
get into, I just want to talk about your book, specifically the Chiron Effect. It's so interesting and like talk about divine timing. I've recently been getting more into astrology. Like it's always
Okay.
something that I thought I should like, but I never dove into. And then I
Yeah,
was at the library and this book was just like staring at me and it was about astrology. And then, I heard from you and your book is about, incorporates astrology. And it's just so interesting how it all works in divine timing. So
it
tell us a
does.
little bit about your book. What is like the Chiron effect? I'm like, and hopefully I'm saying that right.
You are Chiron, Chiron. It's pronounced the CH is like a K, exactly like
Perfect.
you said, Lindsay. And I feel like today I can talk about it a little differently than before. So, astrology is the diagnostic place to start with. Chiron is the healer of the zodiac
Mhm.
and really helps us to know one of 12 areas of core wounding, emotional core wounding that affect our ability to believe that we can actually have what we want.
Mhm.
And my book, its purpose is to really help you to live your personal dreams. And I think that an obstacle to really living our dreams has to do with the belief systems that we have. And our
Mhm.
beliefs are simply thoughts that we think over and over again. And by knowing this area of core wounding, of emotional vulnerability that Chiron in a sign points out for you, Chiron in Aries, for instance, is a core wounding in your sense of value and worth, that
Mhm.
you never quite feel good enough despite achievements. And you tend to people please to source love versus knowing that you can receive and let it in. You don't have to keep doing. Whenever somebody gives to you, we might feel like, oh my gosh, I need to do something for them instead of like pausing and receiving and maybe experimenting with not giving back so quickly, just as a practical example. And I think as we really heal through empathy, empathizing to
Mhm.
ourselves, forgiving ourselves, that we open that door to these areas that we might have felt not good enough or wounded in or vulnerable, they start to become our strengths and we become more authentic as a result of healing this place within ourselves.
Well, I don't think anyone can argue that we need more empathy and self forgiveness. That was just stick out to me. I'm like, yes, 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 we need that. And also, too, with astrology, what I'm coming to realize, and I think this is why I didn't always relate to it at first. I was like,
Yeah,
okay, I'm a Scorpio, but like I don't really relate to all the things of a Scorpio. And
right.
now, after diving into it, I'm like, there's so much more than just like your
Your
sign.
sun sign.
There's
Absolutely.
so
Like what's your
much.
rising and what are your rising and moon sign?
I keep meaning to look it up because I can't figure out when I was born exactly.
Okay. Well, it's okay if you mean you don't have the time, your
Yeah.
time of birth.
I have the
It's,
time frame, but I'm like, do I need the exact like minute?
if you do, that could just be more precise, but
Okay.
usually planets fall in a range of time. So I
Mhm.
suspect whatever you do have about your date of birth, your place of birth and that timing will be enough for you to get a sense of yourself.
Beautiful. Okay. I need
Yeah.
to, that's on my to-do list to look that up. But I keep like focusing on, oh, I don't have the time, but
It's
that's not a good
okay.
excuse.
It's
Yeah,
okay. There's enough to know your date of birth and your place of birth to generate, more about what makes you up besides that Scorpio sun sign.
totally. So based on the birth chart, so people understand like you put in all this information, then you get so much
It
data
can be
on like
overwhelming, right?
on when you were born. So then Chiron is placed in that somewhere, right?
It is. So actually on my website, nolatherapy.com/Chiron, my youngest sibling is a computer coder. And I actually found a site that when you enter your birth info, it just gives you Chiron. So it's so much simpler since the focus of my work is on this Chiron placement, identifying an area of vulnerability up to and including an emotional core wound like neglect, abandonment, feeling unworthy, things like that. And so by knowing your Chiron, specifically, it helps you to hone in to the area where you need to strengthen yourself to really focus your affirmations versus feeling like sometimes Lindsay clients come in and they're like, I don't know what's wrong with me. And that always makes me so sad because I'm like, nothing's wrong with you. You actually make sense in the
Mhm.
context of your life experiences that we tend to kind of pivot and create ways to protect ourselves based on what we've gone through in our lives. And sometimes that actually cuts us off. Protecting ourselves from being hurt can also cut you off from being loved. It's the opposite side of that same coin. And so instead of thinking there's something wrong with you, I like to start like, what's right with you and what are you
Mm,
afraid of? Because it typically is source in this Chiron placement of just wanting to feel safe in your world,
mm,
emotionally, physically, just really to be able to be yourself and
mm.
be loved.
I love that, which is really what we need. And so many of us don't feel safe, whether we're conscious of it or not. So I love this idea of using astrology as a starting point. Because you're
Yeah.
right. Sometimes you're just like so unconscious. Sometimes you don't even know like what's wrong or where to start. So this is a beautiful starting point. And what do you say to anyone that maybe doesn't necessarily resonate with astrology or maybe feels skeptical about it? Do you have anything to say to that? Because I feel like that was me for a while until recently, and now I'm like totally into it. But
Yeah, I don't think you have to believe in astrology to be helped by Chiron. Even His Holiness the Dalai Lama that
yes.
endorsed my book in the full beautiful letter he sent me, he even wrote, Lisa, I don't practice astrology, my paraphrase, it's not his viewpoint. He's a Buddhist scientist, but he sees in my work that the remediation and the healing of our wounding is through compassion and empathy, forgiveness, and utilizing meditation, as I talk in my book about. So you don't have to like believe in astrology. I simply use Chiron as a diagnostic point to illuminate one of 12 areas of vulnerability. And these are things that we all go through in life. Who hasn't been rejected or felt abandoned or has been neglected or neglected your own self, overlooking your own needs to overwork and then you end up with a health issue, for example. So this is like real life practical stuff that my book addresses and helps you with. So try not to get bogged down in the astrology. The Dalai Lama wasn't. So if His Holiness can even be about this, I think most of us can as well, to get to the healing and the real ways to change some aspects of your life that has been painful in the past.
100%. And that's incredible that His Holiness the Dalai Lama endorsed this book. So I'm
Thank
so
you.
excited to read that. That is phenomenal. And I agree. Like, you don't have to believe in gravity or manifesting to
Right.
know that it just works. It's just happening,
Exactly.
right?
Good point. Good point. And I
So,
think too, sometimes Lindsay, people, because I used to think astrology, it's like something that's telling me who I am. And that for me, like turned me off. And I've come to learn astrology is a blueprint of the planets and heavenly bodies in the sky when we were born that we actually wrote for ourselves.
mm,
Like we wrote this plan, we
mm,
wrote this kind of prescription of how our life is going to go, that we created this. As much as you might feel like I didn't create this, I didn't create this pain I'm in, but you know what, we did somehow. We wanted to come into this life with lessons to learn, with things to overcome. And, taking personal responsibility is a big part of my book in healing from
mm,
whatever has wounded you, that what has happened to you, it wasn't necessarily your fault, especially in
yes.
abuses issues of trauma and abuse, this wasn't your fault that you were abused or traumatized, but it is our responsibility to heal. And I know that from being a survivor of childhood sexual abuse, that wasn't my fault, but it has been my responsibility to heal from those things that I went through. And that's where we start to really find our personal power, is believing we can heal,
Mm.
that we can do this.
Such a beautiful way to take your power back, like you just
Yes.
said. I
Yes.
love that. And I do believe as I've like dove more into this, which is kind of hard for the mind to accept, but I do agree and believe that we chose this lifetime and we came here and chose these, maybe category of challenges that we're going to go through. So it makes sense. And I heard that from like a different channel. Like you choose exactly when you're born based on the astrological chart and sign and all that. So interesting. So let's talk a little bit more about core wounds because I think that is such a huge thing that people are just unconsciously walking around with. And I agree that like the first step is always awareness, like
Yeah.
awareness of what's going on. How can we go beyond that to heal those core wounds once we've looked at what, the Chiron is in our chart and
Yeah.
identified all that? Where can we go from there?
Sure, Lindsay. And I think it's important to note that for some people, yes, this is core wounding. This is like you were abandoned. Chiron in the sign of Cancer talks about core wounding by abandonment. And for some friends I have and clients I've worked with, their parent literally walked out the door. My friend's father left her and started a new family, and she felt abandoned. So it may be that specific. It also could be an area of vulnerability, that it wasn't that severe for you
Mhm.
what you experienced, but whatever happened left you vulnerable to where you might feel abandoned, or you might self abandon through drug use, through addictions, through an eating disorder, through overworking, being a workaholic, for example. So there's little nuances of how these core wounds are set up on a spectrum, all the way, core wounding up to and including vulnerability. And I've noticed a lot of people, since we're wired to heal, just like when you cut your skin, the body sends, cells to start healing immediately. Our emotions are like that, that we're wired to heal emotionally. And a lot of us have been trying to do that without having necessarily all the tools in our toolbox, depending
Mhm.
on how you grew up in, the family that you came from, if they taught you how to self soothe, which is one of the greatest skills. And it might seem so basic, but just being able to de escalate when we feel sad, upset. During the pandemic, we saw a lot of this during the lockdowns and just the fear. And it brought up a lot of what's in your toolbox. And
Mhm.
a lot of people not really having the skills to self soothe when the trigger is that great
Mhm.
and that beyond and outside of ourselves. So, my book talks to you about some self soothing skills in the earlier chapters, like really getting an assessment and seeing what tools you have at your disposal and what might I need to add to that, because every day it could look different. Today it
Mhm.
might be a walk to self-soothe, or a bath, and it might be yoga, it could be starting therapy for some deeper
Mhm.
issues. So core wounding on this spectrum, looks differently for everyone.
I
Does
love
that
that.
answer what you're asking?
No, totally. And I think that's what it's all about is having those tools in your toolbox. Like when you're in the moment, you can be so worked up or so lost in that, subconscious programming or whatever it is that you can't get out and then you spiral down. So having just those simple things that you can reach for or go to kind of reroute how your day is going or
And
deal with
slow
those
down.
things.
Yes.
Slow down. I need that.
Yeah, to
I
just
need
slow
that.
down. Absolutely. And
No.
know that, a lot of these things we're not going to solve just in a day today, but that's okay. Even having awareness that I need to get some help for myself, is a breakthrough, is a start to just see that there's an issue here that I want to address, and then going after the healthy methods to address it for yourself.
I love that. And kind of going back a little bit, but I'm so curious, but what kind of got you started on this path? Do you feel like you've always had this like spiritual connection in your life growing up, or did that kind of develop later on?
I think I've definitely always had a spiritual connection, though I didn't identify it as such consciously. I've been reflecting a lot on the family I grew up in.
Mhm.
I'm first generation. My father came to America from Pakistan, having been born into poverty, no electricity, growing up in a tent.
Wow.
And his dream was to become a doctor in America. And in recent years, I've reflected upon the steps he had to go through to fulfill that dream. And his dream was so far beyond his manifested reality. And that to me held the key to a lot of things that I think can help us in our lives, that we can have dreams so beyond our manifested reality. And to achieve them, it takes believing in
Mm.
ourselves and stepping outside of our comfort zone, as my dad did. And I think as we start to do that in our own lives, to step outside of our comfort zone towards the dreams that we have for ourselves by believing that we can do this, we will do this, that life things start to show up for us, opportunities and people. So to really set those kind of goals for yourself, that I want to live more a life of my dreams rather than what's easy or what I've been told I can do, to really reach beyond. And my book helps you with that by really changing out the thoughts in your mind that have limited you and replacing them with thoughts that support you to expand into what you really want for yourself.
I love that. That's been something that's been in my awareness, like actively fighting complacency by going out of your comfort zone. Because
Yeah,
it's so easy. Again, it goes back to like appreciating what you've manifested, appreciating your life, but also, still going after your dreams. It's just like such a interesting balance for me.
it is
But
a
I
balance.
agree, like, it goes back to changing your beliefs, which is really hard. So do you have any, like, tips or practical tips or methods to help people, like, change their core beliefs?
I do 100%. And I actually think it's easier than we think. Our beliefs are just thoughts that we have had on repeat
Mhm.
going through our mind. And to change that and start to believe differently for ourselves, it just takes, I talk in my book, we think up to 60 to 70 thoughts a day. And there's no way we can be aware of all those thoughts. And we don't need to. If you just capture one or two a day, and typically the thoughts that are painful stand out, like I don't have enough money, for example. And to be like, stop, to pause with that. Okay, does that feel good? No, it doesn't feel good to think I don't have enough money. What do I want to believe instead? I want to believe I have enough money. And so I release not having enough money. I replace it with, wanting, I want to see I have enough money. I want to believe that I can have enough money, and writing that statement down, because it might be hard to just go from I don't have enough to I have it all. Like that's not really believable. But like an interim statement is like, I
Mhm.
want to believe I have enough money. I want to see it. I want to know it. I want to be led to the solution and affirm that. It's called the release and replace technique, where we
Mm.
release a negative and fear based thought and replace it with one that supports us. Like, I want to believe I can make enough money and have more financial flow and ease. And you kind of feel your body start to relax when you have the accurate replacement statement, and then to write that down on a sticky note and carry it around. Like, I want to believe I can have more money. I want to believe I have enough money. And then start to see what happens in your life to get you there. The path starts to unfold under your
Mm.
feet.
Mm. That feels very, very resonant. And something I talk about a lot, which you just kind of mentioned, was like distinguishing between like a mind story and then your intuition, or, we can call
Mm,
them so many different things. And I feel like that's kind of what you just hit on. You can, when you slow down, you can identify the stories of your mind and your ego or your identity or whatever. And then you can kind of tune into your soul or your intuition and what it truly believes for you, because it always is supporting you. And
it is always, that's such a good point, Lindsay. Yes. Our inner being, like our innermost self, is always supporting us. Yes.
It's
Yes.
just so hard for us in this society, in this day and age. I feel like, for the common person to slow down and just tune into that. So I guess it just takes time and practice and intentionality.
It only takes a few minutes every day. And I think to make this user friendly, looking at your schedule, your typical schedule during the week, when might you have 5 minutes to sit and to have some more intention, to put your attention upon your intentions? What 5 minute period? Is it the morning, or do you have a lot to do in the morning? Is it at lunch? Is it at night? There's no right time. The right time is what works for you. And to even schedule, put your phone on silent, and take 5 or 10 minutes to really release a negative thought, come up with a replacement, write it down, and even just think about that for
Mm,
yourself. Like, it really just takes a few minutes every day and consistently showing up. And I did this, Lindsay, as a 30-day experiment. Like, okay, universe, I'm going to give this 30 days, and I'm going to consciously like carve out this time, put it on my daily planner and show up. And my life started to change to where now, like, I don't want to miss, a few minutes every day to set
mm.
intentions and just be still and meditate. Like, your life starts to change and it becomes easier to show up for that few minutes, and it gets longer. You'll want to spend more time there because good things are happening to reinforce this behavior.
Truly. And it really is just the small things, like start small and then it will grow over time. So I love that.
Yeah.
Going back to the Chiron effect in core wounding, I found it interesting that you talk about not only individually can we have these core wounds, but sometimes we see them in like geographic areas or groups of people. Can you explain that a little bit? Because I feel like we see that this day and age even more, like that's becoming even more apparent.
Yeah, and I think also, Lindsay, you can find this in other aspects of your life. So definitely look up your personal Chiron placement through your date of birth and place of birth. But also, say if you're married or in a relationship, put in either the date you got married or your first date, whichever is more significant. And our relationships, our friendships have a Chiron placement. And this can
Wow.
reveal the area of vulnerability in your relationship, for example, why you might circulate around a similar topic of frustration, or that your arguments might be sourced from. And it can help you both see, like, oh my gosh, this is just an area of vulnerability for us to both work on together. It can make that process of relating to one another so much easier, as well as if you have a business. I did this for my LLC. I was
Mm,
curious, and I
mm,
put the date that I incorporated into my website where you can enter this stuff, and it generated a Chiron placement in the sign of Libra, which speaks to a core wounding and such in personal independence. And Libra has to do with contracts, both business and marriage contracts. And in that moment that I put the date of birth of my LLC and generated the Chiron placement, I was trying to negotiate out of a contract I didn't read well enough. And so it spoke to me around, I need to really be certain in my business that when I sign a contract, I understand it. And if I don't, to ask questions. So it can really help you in even your business to be aware of the vulnerabilities that might crop up so
wow.
that you're not caught unaware.
Yeah, that
And
is
also
so
like
cool.
the city, the birth of a city, America, July 4th, 1776. Like, cities have an astrological chart, which has been so interesting to me. And there's a Chiron placement, for instance, of cities, of countries, and it can just be kind of fun to play with.
Oh, totally. I'm so intrigued by that. I want to look up
Yeah.
like when I started the podcast or
Yeah.
when,
Oh, that's a
all
good
the things.
idea. Yes, yes, yes.
Oh, that's such a good idea. Well, I have a few more questions for you to
Okay.
respect your time. If people are like hearing this and maybe they want to dive more deeper into like their core wounding or whatever it may be, what are different ways that they can work with you personally? Maybe they feel like they just have some deep trauma or whatever that they need to work through. Are there ways that they can work with you to kind of unpack that?
Yeah, Lindsay, I love that. I do sessions by Zoom with people all over the world, as well as FaceTime, phone, and Skype. So I'd love for you to reach out if you want to know more. My website is nolatherapy.com. It stands for New Orleans, Los Angeles Therapy. That's also my social media handle, Nola Therapy, on Instagram and YouTube. I'm at Chiron Effect on Facebook, and I'd love to work with you on Zoom. I do individual sessions as well as I have a 30-day, like unlimited therapy where this is really great. If you're working through something and you want to be able to text me, like, are you free right now? And if I'm free, I will definitely like take your call or do a Zoom where you have access for a 30-day period to work through some things specifically and just have on the moment, therapy unlimited for a month as often as I'm available,
Mm,
So there are two ways to work with me that I'd love to connect with you over.
I love that. And I love that we can like transcend time and space with
Yeah,
the internet nowadays. It doesn't matter where you're at, you can
I know
still
it's so
connect.
cool.
So cool. And we've talked about therapy so many times on this podcast. So, anyone out there that resonates with that, this is a perfect opportunity to take
Thank
advantage of
you for
that.
that. I am a licensed therapist, and so I've done this work for over 22 years, and I really love helping people to heal and be happier and really live your purpose.
That's why we're here. That's why we're
Yeah.
here to do
Yeah.
those things. We just forget, and that's okay.
I know, and it's okay. Sometimes we get busy with life and paying the bills. We need to do that so that we can find our happiness. So it's all, making room for all of it, just in a way that's easier.
Totally. We all deserve that. Well, two more questions for you. This one's just kind of fun. I've been asking people recently, what's one of your most aligning activities in this time and space that is just bringing you so much joy right now?
That's changing as we speak, Lindsay, because it used to be going to the gym, working out until I'm healing from a couple of like overuse.
Mm,
Um, I don't even want to say quite injuries, but just, I've tended to kind of over work out because it's such a pleasurable an enjoyable activity for me. And so I'm going to acupuncture, and the doctor
mm,
suggested I kind of lay off and rest more. And I'm like, okay, I'm ready to embrace this. So for me, it's been walking,
mm,
just taking long walks. And without, sometime I might listen to music, but often I don't. And I just kind of look around and just notice what thoughts come up. So like walking has been really aligning for me and just being with my natural environment. And that's been very soothing and kind of
mm.
new.
I love that. I need to
How about
take
for
more.
you?
Well, I need to take more walks without music because I'm always tempted to like put in a podcast, which I love podcasts and
Yeah,
they're
I do
so
that as well, but to mix it up.
totally just have some time with you because again we don't give ourselves that very often because we're so quote unquote busy. But I also find it interesting too. I used to get so frustrated when I would have like injuries or whatever that I'm like, okay, this is a sign from the universe to slow down, like I'm going to
Yeah.
embrace it even though that's hard for the mind. So I love that. You know what my aligning activity
Huh.
has been, and this is why this is so like divine right now, is reading my astrology book, which the
That's
Chiron Effect is next, and like
Thank
putting
you.
on uh ambiance on YouTube and just like zoning out and just like studying that feels
You
so
know what,
fun.
Lindsay, that's how I wrote my book. I found ambient music on YouTube, also often like frequencies, for creativity, for love. And that's how I wrote my book over the 3-year period, was putting on these frequencies in the background and then just sitting down to research and write 100%.
I love that. I love the ambient sounds on
Me
YouTube.
too.
I used to be a teacher and I used to play it for my students. I'm like, hopefully they like this, but
Okay, that's cool that you did that for them. That's
yeah,
different.
so cool. And then my last question, and we'll leave it here. What is one piece of advice you would give to someone maybe just starting out on this journey?
The piece of advice I would give you is to the reason why being intentional every day for a few minutes is important is to like clear out a
Mm,
space in your mind
mhm,
free of other people's opinions of what you should do, what you shouldn't do, and really ask, what do I want? And that only comes up in quietness. And that's why cultivating, starting with 5 minutes, for you to do that as young as you can in your life, in your chronological age, and expand it, you'll be able to hear your inner voice so much more clearly and quickly than those of us that started later in life. It's never too late, but I suggest as young as you are to just take that 5 minutes of silence, phone on silent, nothing distracting you. And even if nothing comes to mind, the first 100 times you do it, something will. emerge from your inner self, and that's going to be your guidance to direct you through your entire life that you can trust.
Mm. Beautiful, beautiful advice. I agree. I think a lot of times, I mean, it used to stop me. I was like, am I supposed to have some like profound experience every time? And that's not necessarily the case, right?
Right.
But you just keep doing it, keep exercising that muscle, and it'll be easier to
Yes,
tap in.
exactly.
Lisa, thank you so much for coming on. This is a beautiful conversation, and I'm so excited for everyone to dive into the Chiron effect and connect with you and work with you if that feels aligning. So, thank you so much.
Thank you, Lindsay. You have such beautiful energy. I appreciate being here today.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Lisa, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I truly enjoyed that conversation so much. You also have beautiful energy, and I know that's going to help so many people. So, if you want to connect with Lisa and work with her, there are so many different ways you can work with her, or check out her book, The Chiron Effect. She is NOLA Therapy on all platforms, and I will link it all in the show notes. But I'm just so excited to dive into this book next after the astrology book that I'm currently reading. So, like I said, we're also going to be picking the winner for our September giveaway where you guys left reviews, and I'm going to pull one person randomly to give this personal power enlightened candle, which I have mine right here. If you're watching on YouTube, I always have it on my desk. I'm seriously obsessed with these candles. They are clean. They are woman-owned business, and they have a crystal at the bottom. They're just magical, magical candles. And the crystal was charged under the full moon. So all the magical stuff. So I'm going to use my random name picker. And the winner of this giveaway is Jack's mom 11. So I'm pretty sure I know who that is. But if you're listening, please reach out to me so I can send you your candle. Thank you guys so much for leaving reviews. You have no idea how much that helps the podcast reach more people. And such a beautiful and free way to support the podcast. So if you haven't left a review yet, go and do that. It takes less than 30 seconds. And I think I'm going to do another giveaway, maybe for an internal guidance session. Let me know if that's something you're interested in, because I love doing those internal guidance sessions. And I want to give one of those away to you guys who listen to the podcast. So that is all I have for you this week. Please reach out to Lisa or myself on Instagram. Share your takeaways with us. Again, my handle, if you are new here, is at Lindsay with an A M Tanner. Please subscribe if you are new here as well, because we have new episodes every single Monday. Sometimes they're solo episodes, sometimes they're interviews, but I do have a ton of aligning interviews lined up for you guys. I hope you guys have been enjoying them as much as I do. I can't believe I get to do this, because it's just so fun to talk to these people, and they're so wise and bring so much wisdom. And I hope you can feel their energy through whatever mechanism you are listening to this podcast on. So with that, I'm sending you all the love, all the high vibes. And of course, I will see you next week on Alignment Adventures.